The Final One Standing
by William Hill
on Off the Ball.
Download the app and play today.
18 plus gamblingcare.ie.
Welcome along to Final One Standing. Quickly becoming my favourite slot of the week. I'm joined by Ben and David today. We'll go through some of the games in more detail, lads, first, but let's start with the main event, which is my continued presence in the Final One Standing game. Down to the last three in the Off the Ball League. I'm now at the stage where it's like, do I value the money for charity more, or should I be like, throwing it so that one of our listeners has a chance to win? I don't take €2,500 off one of our fine listeners.
Yeah, it's fair enough, I suppose. But charity also need the money, so
they do, yeah, and probably more. Yeah. It's exactly. Yeah, no, I do want to give it to charity. What I also want to do though is actually win £500,000 for myself, which I'm also had a chance of in the overall league, which is within 1% now. We're down to 2,700 people. Now, what I need is the help of the listeners and you two fine experts to tell me who I'm going for this week. So what I have left is not exactly a motley crew. I could pick Crystal Palace at home to Brighton.
Oh, the M23 derby.
The M23 derby. I do like Brighton though, and they're in good form. I could pick Nottingham Forest at home to Leeds United. Forest drew 0-0 with they did play an annoyingly decent team, if not quite a full team last night. Tighten things up under Dyche.
The Sean Dyche Renaissance at home as well.
Leeds were poor last week against Brighton, but Forest haven't actually won a game yet.
No,
in the turnaround under Dyche, and he is a drawer.
Yeah, like Leeds they lost to Brighton last week and are pretty miserable in doing so. Like, is this the end of days? It kind of feels like that for Daniel Farke. Like, it feels like Leeds will sack him at some stage. So, is this?
I think we kind of knew that going into the season, it was going to get to a stage where this was going to happen. I think if you're going to choose against Leeds now, is probably the time for it.
Feels like they might be in a bit of a slump. All right, yeah. I could pick Aston Villa at home to Bournemouth in the overall league, or ironically, in the only difference I have between the two of them, I could pick Bournemouth over Aston Villa in the off the ball league. So I'm probably leaving that game alone, to be honest. Villa, I definitely wouldn't back against them at home. They've a brilliant home record. I've only lost to Palace there in the last year or so. Brentford at home to Newcastle. I wouldn't rule it out, but I'm probably not going to pick it. I'm not picking Wolves away to Chelsea. Not picking Sunderland at home to Arsenal. West Ham at home to Burnley is going to come into our conversation, I would believe. And Everton at home to Fulham, I think, will come into our conversation. So there we are now. David Moyes is a drawing manager and Sean Dyche is a drawing manager. So those two things worry me. West Ham, I have a West Ham fan that I'm looking at right now.
Nuno is a winning manager.
Are West Ham going to beat Burnley? Who are an underrated football team, I think.
Yeah. It would be very West Ham to go and get pumped 3-0 by Burnley after looking like we were on the start of a comeback last week. I'd be probably more confident if the game was at Turf Moor, to be honest with you.
Except for the fact that the win did come at home. I would have had having seen the toxicity at the London Stadium so far this season in a couple of occasions. If they had gone to St James's Park and won, I actually wouldn't be that confident for this week. But the fact is they did go and beat a good team at home, and they kind of answered back a little bit, and by the end the sit-in protest and everything like that, not that it was really that toxic towards the players anyway, but it very much removed them from it on a day when they won, and they can kind of feel like it's it's the fans in the club here, we're actually just doing our part.
Yeah, I feel like there's a bit of momentum behind the team from that, and there's definitely a feel-good factor in this week. Even like, I know it's such a small part of this, but watching like the videos they're putting out on social media this week, the mood of the club has changed so much from one small result, and it's that momentum thing of finding the midfield that we've been waiting for all season.
Yeah. And what is that midfield?
Oh, well, it's Potts sitting at the base, and then he gives the ball forward to Mateus Fernandes and Lucas Paquetá, and they do their stuff. Somerville is such a weird one on the wing. Like, you can watch him for 90 minutes and you think he's had an unbelievable game because he's dribbled by however many men, but it's like, did you ever watch that Yannick Bolasie compilation that he posted himself after I think they beat Manchester City? He kind of reminds me of that sometimes. You don't really know if he's had a good game or not.
There's no end product.
He's on the ball.
Yeah, but he's on the ball for the majority of our attacks.
If he's on the ball too much and not doing anything with it, then he's taken away from the rest of the attack. But is Bowen in the kind of form that you'll be able to lean on him again?
I think Bowen is
usually enough.
Bowen is always enough. Even if Bowen's having an off game, you'll back Bowen to pick up the ball on the wing, beat his man and stick it in the far corner. And I think these games, and you have two teams who are down the bottom of the table, kind of struggling though. I don't know if you'd call Burnley struggling because we all pen them in for this from the start of the season. Those X-factor players and a player that you can just pick up and, create that kind of magic are usually the difference in these type of games.
I wasn't expecting to start with West Ham Burnley here, and we'll get to Dave from William Hill in a minute, and we'll go into the big games. But Burnley have played kind of, I think they're low in the table because they've had a lot of hard games. I actually think they're doing well. I'm not saying they'll stay up or that it will last, but I'd be delighted if I was a Burnley fan at the start of the season because their heads above water. And they're just not at a position in their development where they have any chance against a City or an Arsenal, although they very nearly got something off Liverpool. But they've played everybody and they've won the games they're supposed to win against the teams around them.
Yeah, that win away to Wolves a week or two ago was massive for them. They don't give away a hell of a lot of goals. Scott Parker has
They gave away none last season, famously.
In the Championship. But Scott Parker's built his team kind of a bit of a polar opposite to Vincent Kompany, where it's it's based on kind of being hard to beat, being quite defensive, but also they can cause problems. Jadon Anthony, especially in the wing as well. I just don't fancy Burnley to score against West Ham. It's like West Ham though. West Ham haven't kept a home clean sheet all season.
I was going to say you're seriously overestimating our defence of Kilman and Todibo.
Yeah, but I just find with Nuno Espirito Santo, he managed to get the structure of the team right after a while, and they'll be not good at lots of things, but they'll be very good at some things. And I think keeping a good defensive structure, not giving the ball away in poor areas, I think West Ham might go on a bit of a run from now, and especially after that win last week against Newcastle. I think
the West Ham fan doesn't believe you, but I think the neutral view is more reliable here, I would say.
I think they're too.
If you look at the fixtures after the game, it's an incredibly tough run of fixtures after this Burnley game. This Burnley game is a do or die. It needs to be 3 points. Especially if you look at the fixtures that are coming up after it.
Yeah, that makes me think I should go for them. Got to bring in Dave Kellner from William Hill. Dave, we'll talk about the big games. We somehow got stuck in the quagmire of West Ham Burnley to start with, and the reason we have is because I've really run out of teams. I'm in the last 3 in the off the ball league for final one standing. I'm in the 1% for the overall game, and look, let's face it, I'm starting to get a little bit obsessed with it at this stage.
Oh, yeah, you will be. Unbelievable. Congratulations, first of all. Less than 1% of people left in the original and the biggest jackpot, that £500,000 jackpot for final one standing. Who have you used then, Mick? You're obviously looking at that West Ham game as a potential. I can tell you that in terms of this week, obviously, most people in that, down to 1%, most people in that £500,000 jackpot have used all the big clubs. So at the moment, 49% going for West Ham this week. They're the most popular pick, 17% for Forest. Those that have got Chelsea left are probably utilising Chelsea this week.
Home to Wolves.
Yeah, 10% have got Chelsea left and they've stuck them in. Palace 5%, Villa 3.5%. So what's your vibe this week, Nick? How are you looking to play it?
It's Forest, West Ham, and then I'm also thinking Palace, but that game against Brighton's form is a little bit too good, but just Palace are a team that you kind of trust at home at the moment. I've usually had my decision made by this stage, Dave, but right now I think it'll be tomorrow morning by the time I kind of finally make a call on it. But the reason we were talking about West Ham for so much is probably the same as what the 49% of people are thinking. You look at the opposition, you look at last week's result. We've a West Ham fan in the room here who isn't as confident because I suppose he remembers beyond last week when things weren't so good at West Ham.
I think that's it. I think that's it, isn't it? I mean, how much do you take into account West Ham's performance against Newcastle? They were good in that game without question, but Newcastle I thought were really poor in that match as well. And I worry about that game. I don't like Leeds away from Ellen Road this season. It was something that I was hanging my hat on pre-season. I think they're really good at home, Leeds, when it's quite a hostile atmosphere, Ellen Road, and the fans will get behind them at home. I don't think they've got much quality, Leeds, and I'd really want to oppose them away from home. So it is that kind of that toss-up. Similar sort of prices as well. West Ham are even money with Nottingham Forest available at 5-4, so very similar prices. Two home sides there. Yeah. The Hammers at home against Burnley, with Forest at home against Leeds. Personally, I don't want to swear you here.
Go on. I need some advice.
if I was in your position, I'd be with Forest to beat Leeds over West Ham to beat Burnley personally. But
no, Forest have been the inkling since last Sunday, so I probably have got this far going on the gut, so I probably shouldn't change at this stage, but we'll see. Dave, the two big games this weekend, obviously starting and ending the weekend with the two underachievers of the Big Six in Spurs and United, and obviously the big game with City and Liverpool on Sunday. They're probably very little final one standing action for those teams, at least in the original game at this stage. But I'm sure the market could tell us something about the way these two games are going to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting because United are slight favourites to beat Spurs at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That game, 12:30 kick-off on Saturday. It's a Bet Builder winnings boost game as well, so 25% boost on your Bet Builders. Spurs impact sub available there as well. Spurs are 13-8. The draw 12-5 with Manchester United, and the betting at 6-4. Personally, I was quite surprised to see United favourites to win at Spurs, especially with what happened midweek. I know obviously Spurs were expected to handle Copenhagen, but that was a bit of a rout. And I mean, are people reading too much into Manchester United's recent form? There's definitely been a bit of a revival for Manchester United, and only Liverpool have had more shots in the Premier League this season than Manchester United. We've seen really entertaining affairs between these two down the years, so I can see both teams definitely scoring in the game. I think I'd look at that. I think both teams will get on the score sheet, but I actually fancy Spurs to win and both teams to score, which is available at 7-2. I just think that we saw a little bit more from Xavi Simons midweek, and I think Spurs have value in the market. I think the market may be reading too much into Manchester United's recent form, and I think Spurs at home can beat United.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that, actually. I certainly wouldn't have United as favourites. The big one then, City and Liverpool, I think it's just as much of a head-scratcher, really, because City's, a one-man team basically at the moment. When the big tests have come so far this season, they haven't answered them, but they've been taking care of business elsewhere. And Liverpool have won 2 in a row, but it's two teams that have suited them, I suppose, in Villa and Real Madrid. And Manchester City has been the talk of the football town this year, no longer playing a way that will suit Liverpool and Arne Slot.
Yeah, and I guess Pep Guardiola once said that Spurs were the Harry Kane team. It's like City, the Erling Haaland team, really, isn't it? I mean, he's just been absolutely sensational. We will, a bit of a spoiler here, but we will have an epic boost on this game as well. It'll be Erling Haaland to score. 5 of the last 6 Haaland epic boosts have landed because he just keeps scoring. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's got 27 in his last 17 appearances for club and country, Erling Haaland. The latest betting here, City a shade of odds on at 10-11. The draw 29-10, Liverpool 5-2. Obviously, impact sub applies to those bet builders on this game as well, and we'll have a money back offer on your bet builders for this game too. I don't know how you guys see it, but I just fancy City to beat Liverpool, and I think that battle between Erling Haaland and Virgil van Dijk's a really interesting one, because down the years, Erling Haaland's found it difficult to get the better of Van Dijk, but he's in such sensational form this season. I just wonder whether he'll score in the game. And I quite like City to win. I do think both teams will score in the match as well. But since the start of April, City have picked up the most points in the Premier League. They've won 9 of 10 at the Etihad in that spell as well. I favour City. The odds compilers favour City as well. Odds on at 10-11 to win the game.
Jeez, I like the sound of nearly 3-1 for a draw in that game, because that sort of feels like if Liverpool have got their act back together, you think they could go to the Etihad and get a draw.
I think it depends on what type of football City are going to play. Are City going to play the football they played against Arsenal, or are they going to play the football they played against Borussia Dortmund during the week? I think that will be, that'll be kind of the decider on the day of what can Erling Haaland get 1v1 against Virgil van Dijk and run into 30 yards of space. Like, that's the way I'd be going.
That's the way we'll be thinking of it, yeah. Dave, there are 2 big games for us to look forward to this weekend after a mediocre enough week, but I suppose my focus will be on the City ground, I think. Yeah, Confirm with me tomorrow.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, I think like you just said a few moments ago, you've stuck with your gut throughout, and it's got you to the last 1% of players standing in the original jackpot, £500,000. So it would be maybe be folly to go against the gut, but yeah, I guess it's a choice between Forest and West Ham for you.
Great stuff, Dave. Listen, come back for the party. We'll have streamers and the whole thing next week when you join us, when I've won £500,000. Final one standing on Off the Ball is brought to you by William Hill. Download the app and play today. Over 18s only. See gamblingcare.ie for more. Dave Kellner, thanks very much. Guys, let's talk then about Spurs, or Spurs and United first, because Dave brings up a good point there about the midweek game. I wouldn't be overly concerned about the opposition or so, but Spurs scored goals, and the whole thing about, like, I just feel like there had to be a bit of a breaking point after last week in terms of the way they're playing and the general negativity, and I kind of feel like it's just absolutely incumbent on that squad, along with their manager, don't get me wrong, to say we have to just go out there and be positive this weekend. There's too much backlash from the way they played against Chelsea, especially losing 2 home games in a row. It's not even that they're fifth in the league, but they're not even getting recent results at the Tottenham Stadium, so that they can't rest on that and say, oh, we're fifth in the league, we're fine. They almost have to go and give it a go against United this week.
Yeah, well, they've got an excellent record against Manchester United. They haven't been beaten in the last 7 games.
Yeah.
This is the first time these two sides have met since the Europa League final, and that day, like, Spurs done a job on United, tactically as well as tactically under a different manager and Ange Postecoglou. Spurs, I think, because it got so toxic last week, I think that was more a case that who they lost to. They lost to Chelsea again, and the Chelsea fans
without a shot. Almost,
and like I don't think Thomas Frank is really going to change the way he plays. It's going to be like more pragmatic football, which might actually suit Manchester United, I think, as well. United had more the ball against Forest last week and didn't do a whole pile with it in an attacking sense. So I think Spurs should just continue to play the way they are. I think the home results will come. But the game against Copenhagen during the week, I don't know if you can read anything into that. The English teams are so much more stronger than the European teams, especially this season. And Spurs will eventually turn it around. I think just their fans are just a bit too entitled.
There's a dig at the end of that comment.
I don't necessarily disagree with that dig from David, to be honest.
Neither do I.
I do think the performance against Chelsea was disgraceful. And like you said, they are due a response. My worry for Spurs would be the attacking department. If you don't have a recognised out-and-out number 9, Richarlison is not good enough to be a number 9. Solanke, don't know what the situation is there. And then you've got Colin Wani, who you hear so much about him, and he's transferred so much money to PSG from Frankfurt, yet every time I've watched him I've been kind of disappointed.
It's a bit of the Alvaro Morata about Randall Colomwani. I see he's back in the French squad, but the thing is, was that performance against Chelsea last week more disgraceful than the one that Ange was like, oh, we're going to go for it, mate, and he just done, had 2 players sent off and played like literally every
9 men on the halfway line, yeah.
Like that was disgraceful in my eyes, because he gave his side no chance to win that game.
The 2 red cards gave them no chance to win that game. It was one of those ones that's probably overanalyzed, and he tried something that was stupid and didn't work, but it was because they were in an absolutely diabolical situation that wasn't of his making. But look, and I'm in no way an Ange defender.
I know that.
No, you do, yeah. But in this case, I always thought there was a bit of fun to that. I was like, let's see something new in football. Okay, there's a reason we won't see it again.
Yeah.
Well, the last time we saw them face each other and Ange was manager, it was arguably up there for the worst game of football anyone has ever seen. So
in the Europa League final.
Yeah.
So sure.
I just wonder about was it disgraceful last week? I watched that match and it bored to tears by it. It's funny, I was just saying, there's some interesting fixtures this week. I kind of forgot Spurs and Chelsea played in what should be an interesting fixture because it was so poor. It was just an awful game to watch. But I thought that they just... Yeah, maybe disgraceful if you're looking at it from a fan's point of view and you're kind of paying your money in. You're thinking, right, we're home against one of our biggest rivals. I want to go for it. And that's fair. But it wasn't as if all of their performance was terrible. There was, they were solid enough. They lost 1-0. Some parts of that team are working in a way that I think last year you'd argue none of it was working.
Yeah, that's fair. But the one thing we always got out of Ange teams was attack. And the only chance I can remember them having that Chelsea game is Kudus had an effort from the edge of the box out on the right hand side. And for that to be your only effort at home in a London derby.
Look, and absolutely, there's massive improvement needed. I think there will be a slight mindset shift this week, and they'll have to go for a little bit more. And I don't care who they were playing at the week. I think it's a good thing that they were scoring goals. But just put yourself in Thomas Frank's shoes, right? You've lost your best attacking player and a club legend this summer, right? Your two most creative players are out injured in Kulusevski and James Maddison long term, right? And it's like, right, you've got a new signing who's doing very well, but he's a winger, you know what I mean? He's not creating in open, like he's not like you almost need to create for him as opposed to the other way around. So they do have, like, solidity is probably the first objective. Yeah. From Spurs' point of view. Also, they finished 17th last season. And I have to keep coming back to that. So you do almost have to start slowly and say, what's my pragmatic approach here? And the thing about Frank is he'll very, very quickly get labelled now in the tabloid press and in these types of conversations as being not quite a Spurs manager and quite a negative, and but he's not actually. He's somebody that over his career has seen what group of players he has and adapted his play to it, which you're a Manchester United fan, and it could go well or it could go badly, but you've a manager who absolutely won't do that. I'd prefer to be, and Villa this season I think are going to the place where it's like, I wish Emery wasn't as absolutely, like, we've got a player sitting on the bench who's not even getting minutes because he won't do exactly the way the manager wants a build up. And I always wonder, is like, well, he's on your squad, so why don't we play in a way that suits everybody, And look, in no way I think Emery's a better manager than Frank. I think we even saw it in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium game a couple of weeks ago. But at the same time, I think there is something to be said for an adaptive manager who doesn't have a philosophy. He just wants to win games and can do it all.
Yeah, I think if you have faith with Thomas Frank, and if Spurs go on a bad run where they lose a couple of games, okay, it's going to be toxic because that's just the nature of the fan base that they have. But if you look, I looked at the table this time last year, and Spurs were 7th, and they finished 10 places below that last year and 17th. Thomas Frank is not going to let that happen. If Spurs
it's not going to go into free fall.
No, they're not going to go into free fall. They're going to be hard to beat, and there's something to be said for that. Like, we can see that, like, the football in the Premier League has obviously quite dramatically shifted this year as teams are, kind of following the Thomas Frank-ish kind of model. Even Pep Guardiola is kind of following that model where they're bigger, they're harder to beat, they're maybe having less of the ball, they're playing more in the counter-attack. And I think long term, Spurs will get the benefits of that. The thing is that, the Spurs way, a bit like the West Ham way, I think it's just a load of nonsense, really. Like, they've won 1 trophy, 2 trophies-ish in a long, long, long time. Have a bit of faith with Thomas Frank.
2 trophies-ish.
Yeah, the League Cup,
Yeah, no, League Cup's a trophy, but it was in 2008, so it's, or whatever year it was.
Yeah, and the Europa League was like an embarrassment because the English teams were just so much stronger than the rest. But I think just have a bit of faith with Thomas Frank. He's going to get his best players back fit eventually, and he will find a way to get results, and Spurs will finish in a decent position in the league where they should be.
The other thing, just before we finish up on this, we're going to say is for Spurs fans as well, you gave out the whole last season about Ange Postecoglou's football and not being pragmatic enough. You have a manager now who's pragmatic, and you're doing reasonably well. Just stick with him.
They're a point behind Liverpool.
They can't lose on Saturday. They can't lose 3 league home games in a row.
But if you came 17th last season, losing 3 league games in a row is nothing.
3 games at home in a row, I think it's a big black mark on you. Yeah. Now, they've been hard enough games. Like, it's not like not none of them are straightforward.
It's a manager in his first couple of weeks of a job that it's a big step up for him. No two ways about it. He's gone from Michelin to Brentford to Spurs.
These things get judged.
No.
I don't think
you're saying it big.
In terms of the pressure,
it 100% is big. The size of the club.
He could have made all these. Like, if he hadn't come out of his box for 4 games in a row as Brentford manager, there'd be no conversation about it. No one would even notice.
Yeah,
and
Spurs, they
think they're big, but they do have that attention. In terms of the pressure, that is a fact. Like, I think whether it's warranted or not is a separate question.
Yeah. I know they want to be like the London club and they have the brand new stadium, but like, I think they just need a bit more reality, I think, in their lives.
Yeah, but nobody's going to get more. We all need more reality, but it's not something that's on the cards anytime soon for football fans anyway.
I was going to say, come from West Ham fan who we can be called to do it at times. I know Spurs fans can be as well, but you can't debate that this is not a step up manager, even in terms of media spotlight,
no, of course
expectations.
Is,
He's playing in 60,000 seater stadium every week. Like you said, if something happens at Brentford, no one's going to pay a single attention to it.
Attention, no.
Whereas if he makes one, but if he makes one slip up as Spurs manager, it's all over the headlines the next day, and that's just the nature of the beast.
Anyway, let's talk about United just briefly, because I want to get on to the other match. Speaking of reality checks. So there's two ways of looking at last Saturday. It is everything's still the same. Playing against a team who are in a free fall. They score 2 goals in 5 minutes. You know, just when we look like we're in control of the team, we should be the game. We should be winning those games. Yeah. And if United are to make any kind of a serious run of improvement and get out of the calamity years, we need to just do that. The other way of looking at it, which I think is the way I look at it, and I imagine is the way you look at it, is those things aren't going to disappear overnight. No. And they ultimately were the better team in a game. And when the calamity happened, unlike against, say, Brentford, they fought back. They got the result. They probably still should have won. Like, on the balance of things, probably still should have won the game. Yeah, like, I think Manchester United, it's not going to be all plain sailing. You know, you win a game against Liverpool away in Anfield, and you think, right, that's a massive turning point. It's not. It's not. You know, the path of improvement or growth is never going to be linear. I think that game last week against Nottingham Forest, if that was last season, I think they would have probably lost the game, and maybe lost the game quite convincingly. Excuse me. If United play in a similar way to that against Spurs tomorrow, you'd fancy them to at least get another point. Tomorrow, a draw is fine for Manchester United. I think so too, yeah. Because they've had 7 games up against Spurs where they haven't won. The last time they won was against Spurs was in 2022, and Antonio Conte was the manager of Spurs in his kind of final days. So, yeah, United have improved, and they need to just be a little bit more consistent, but they are at least more harder to beat than what they have been or what they've showed. The team makes sense, doesn't it, the last couple of weeks, and it's sort of it's starting to take shape. You sort of know 9 of the players every week now at this stage, maybe 8. And he's making less changes. Okay, he's still making that annoying change to the back 3 with like 20 minutes to go, which I find kind of, I don't know, it's a bit, I don't know if it does any good for the 11 players on the pitch. United have had a goalkeeper in now for a couple of games where he's looked particularly solid, which has been a massive kind of improvement and confidence for the team. Ahmad was excellent at times going forward last week, and then also really suspect defensively, especially from a physical standpoint. And that is where I think Spurs and Thomas Frank will kind of try to hurt United, is that like back post, like what Forest did last week. So I think like United are going to have problems against the Spurs team, but they are going to hurt them in attacking sense. Like Spurs will push up the pitch a couple of times, and can Cunha and Mbumo and Šeško and maybe Mason Mount gets brought back into the team. Can they hurt them on the counter attack with Bruno Fernandes in behind them? I think for sure they can. Yeah. Just looking at City, and so City lost to Spurs on the 23rd of August at home. They've won every home game. They beat Manchester United 3-0. They beat Napoli 2-0. They've beaten Burnley 5-1. They beat Everton 2-0. They beat Bournemouth 3-1 last week, right? So they're on a good run of form at home. I would argue that none of those teams that I've said have been in the Spurs sort of level, especially at that Manchester United performance. And I think they've looked kind of imperious and comfortable, and the games have been boring, you know, and Haaland's got 2 in the first half, and it's been like last Sunday's game against Bournemouth was just like it's hard to watch. You just know as soon as he goes in, it was sort of done. And Bournemouth obviously very, very good side, like, you know, and playing very well. But it does feel to me like, given some of the away performances and losses this season, and even that game against Spurs, the Villa defeat, the Brighton defeat, I don't know if we can judge City yet. I think they need to go and beat Liverpool, and then we start putting them in the real conversation about, you know, title contenders or just being a factor again. I think so long as they kind of seem to wilt at the big challenges, you know, it's a massive game for them. We're all talking about Liverpool all week, and we tend to, and that's the fan base stuff and all. But if you're Pep or City this week, is like, we have to win this game. Yeah, for the psychology of the season as much as anything else. I wouldn't.
I wouldn't base it off if they don't win this game like the rest of the season is over. Obviously, it is huge, and we've seen over the last couple of seasons that the winner of these type of games does tend to go on and have a better chance of winning towards the end of the season. What I will say about talking about judging Manchester City, Erling Haaland has been the only one to show up this season. I think it's quite fair to say.
Well, nobody has more than one Premier League goal outside of Haaland.
Outside of Maxime Stev own goals, don't forget them. But the losses for me have been what has kind of defined their season. Ryan Cherky looked so promising in his debut. He gets injured, missed a couple of weeks. He's come back now the last couple of weeks, and he's looked so impressive on his return. Rodri in the middle of the park is the one, and look, there is the debate of will Rodri ever get back to the fitness that we saw and the levels that we saw before he got injured. Nico Gonzalez, I've no doubt, has the capabilities to go on and be a top class midfielder in a couple of years. But if you throw Nick Gonzalez in the middle of the park to replace Rodri at the moment, like, there is no one that can do half the job that Rodri does in the middle of the park for Manchester City. And I'd worry for them going into these type of games. Liverpool's midfield seems to be back clicking again. Gravenberch back in there is so big in that defensive role, and then McAllister and Szoboszlai back in again, which is something that people have called for a while to revert back to that midfield three. I would worry for Manchester City's midfield without a Rodri going up against that.
It's hard to see, even though he played well, I thought, against Real Madrid, it's hard to see him starting Wirtz on Sunday.
I think he has to start Wirtz.
You think so?
I think he has to start Wirtz.
Instead of McAllister?
No, instead of Cody Gakpo, I play him off the left again.
Yeah, but you see, that's what I think too, but he's not going to do that. Cody Gakpo is the most undroppable player on that Liverpool team for some reason.
No, Dominic Szoboszlai is, I think.
No, okay, but I think Dominic Szoboszlai might actually be, but what I'm saying is, in the way Slot's looking at things, Gakpo hasn't even been rested. Like, he seems to play every minute of every game. Yeah,
well, he came on during the week. Yeah, he was fine. He kind of came on through the middle, but I just thought Wirtz looked like the Bayer Leverkusen Wirtz, especially during the week. I think you have to play him in this sort of game. You're going to need to keep retention of the ball.
Yeah.
Like, I could see Ekitike being dropped because I thought he was not great during the week. He's not going to drop Salah. I thought Slot would have had.
If you dropped Ekitike, could you play Wirtz as a false nine? He's no Roberto Firmino. They're completely opposite type players, but it's also a role that obviously Liverpool have had success with.
I think the tactics have changed though, and the reason why that Firmino dropping in works so well is because you had Mane and Salah either side, and then what you had, which they don't have anymore, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. And he is the big reason, and he's the reason why Salah hasn't been performing to the levels he has this season. Because when you had Trent Alexander-Arnold out there on that right wing, he allowed to go outside, which allowed Salah to come inside, which then worked with the false nine. So I think if you play Wirtz as a false nine against Manchester City,
they're still taking up each other's space.
They're taking up each other's space, and you don't have that outside right player to make those overlapping runs anymore. Like they just don't have it. And Frimpong is maybe the one player that could have done it, but obviously he's out at the moment. I think you have to play an out and out striker. Isak is probably not going to be fit to start this game, so I think Ekitike has to start. And I think I would start Gakpo out on the left hand side, not only just because he can be that occupying presence out on the wing, but we have seen Gakpo have the ability to come inside and pop in a long ranger. And what he does is he brings you that width on that side, which I think is going to be so crucial. I think you need to play out and out, at least one out and out winger against his team.
Yeah.
Against this Man City team. I would not change that midfield three from Gravenberch, Szoboszlai and McAllister. You cannot put Wirtz.
I think that's was almost more and more obvious now, more and more clear that at least for now, at least this side of Christmas, if Liverpool need to win a game, those three, if they're fit, have to play.
Yeah. For sure. Like, I think on the Trent point, like I think it's his range of passing, like especially when teams were pushed up the field against Liverpool, he was so good at just firing balls in behind, or just finding that way to pass into the front three, or kind of into the space for Salah. I think the Liverpool midfield three looks like they're ticking again. Alexis McAllister obviously had a lot of kind of fitness issues and stuff during the summer, and he's only kind of really getting back to his best now. They beat Real Madrid during the week, but like, was that a bit of false hope?
There's an element of, like, you know, Slot with the, as I said on the show during the week, the big neon sign pointing to how to beat Liverpool, you know, constantly complaining about teams playing long balls over them and all. And then, like, the biggest gripe as a Villa fan was, grand, play your own way, but adapted to, it's horses for courses, adapted to your opponent. And Villa did literally the opposite and gifted Liverpool the game and their confidence and so on. Real Madrid were always going to do that. Real Madrid were always going to play a certain way, and it was a great game to watch. But it felt like a game from 2 years ago, didn't it? Like, there was an element of both teams kind of playing their own game, and Liverpool are going to be brilliant against that. So, but the thing that you take out of those, and City, by the way, I think will probably play in a more direct way that won't suit them. But the thing that you take out from that is over those course of those 2 games, Salah scores for a second game in a row against Villa. McAllister gets the goal during the week. Wirtz has a very good game, I think, against Madrid. Conor Bradley has had his 2 best games of the season in a position that they've been badly struggling in.
Yeah.
They've conceded they've had 2 clean sheets in a row and a dodgy defence. There's loads of things that, like, outside of whether they mean anything versus in terms of the opponent, that bring you on and go and let them go now with a completely different feeling than they would have had 2 weeks ago.
On that game, I don't know if you can read too much into that game, just on the Wirtz thing. Wirtz feels like he was signed for these type of games, and he's performed so much better against the teams where the physicality isn't as strong. It's probably fair to say.
That won't be the case this week.
Exactly. So I don't think you can read too much into Wirtz's performances against that type of team.
Sure. I mean it as an overall Liverpool point, though, in terms of them bringing on their feeling about this season.
Yeah, I think getting reintroducing Andy Robertson back into the team has been excellent as well. I thought he was very good against Villa. I thought he was pretty good again against Real Madrid, and his overlapping runs, and he doesn't push too far up the pitch as well. He allows kind of Wirtz to come inside. That's why I would start Wirtz. But the question is that, like, are Manchester City going to play the way they played against Arsenal? Like, who scores first in this game is, I think, the key to how the game will fold out or turn out. If Manchester City score first, and let's say it's Haaland, whoever it is, Liverpool, you have the ball, come break us down. City have really improved when it comes to, like, their defensive structure, their defensive shape, and, like, let's counter-attack you. Let's play with Savinho, or let's play with Haaland. Jeremy Doku looked really, really good again during the week against the poor Borussia Dortmund team, granted, but I think in the Premier League I thought he's been really, really good as well. He hasn't scored, he's had a couple of assists, but I want to see Virgil van Dijk one against one, or Ibrahim Konate 1-on-1 against Haaland, and a race from the halfway line. If I was a Man City fan, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
Because he's unstoppable.
Liverpool can't let that happen.
They can't let that happen, but it's not like has he got too much, belief in his own team that, like, okay, we're going to keep the ball, and a bit like what Barcelona were during the week, we're just going to play our own style, and whatever happens defensively, we'll be fine. Is that kind of, I don't want to say arrogance because it's the wrong word, but, like, is that going to happen from Liverpool's case on Sunday?
You kind of think it will, do you? You're leaning towards City in this, are you?
I am leaning towards City, yeah. I just think Liverpool, they beat Villa last week. Okay, they were better, but, like, Villa just handed them 2 goals.
Oh, terrible, like, yeah.
And I don't think City are going to make the same mistakes.
No.
And Guardiola's got a terrible record against Liverpool. They're going to be so up for it, like.
What do you think?
It all comes down to Haaland, doesn't it? It's if Haaland can get that one-on-one chance. Like that Bournemouth game last week, it was so depressing watching it from a non-City fan, because as soon as he got the ball on the halfway line, it was, it's going to be a goal, he's going to score.
Well, Bournemouth equalised, and we're playing, and so you're thinking, right, they're playing as well as City, and then it's 2-1. I know it ended up 3-1, but it was 2-1, and then Haaland misses a chance for a hat-trick, and you go, hold on, he's done nothing. He nearly got a hat-trick in 36 minutes. Yeah. Which would have been headlines in the past, you know what I mean? And that's the difference. You're playing with someone like him versus all the strikers and all the teams of the past, where somebody getting a hat-trick in a half an hour was a highlight of their career.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even remembered Haaland doing that if he did it, like, in a month's time, if he had got that just last week.
The Liverpool of the past, I would argue, wouldn't allow those chances to happen, but Liverpool's defence over this season, and you could see Haaland getting 1, maybe 2 of those one-on-one type chances.
Yeah, I have a feeling for Liverpool, I have to say.
Man City and Pep Guardiola famously, like, these Liverpool Man City games over the last 10 years have been the best games in the Premier League, but City and Guardiola especially hated the transition, and City hired a couple of coaches from Liverpool this summer and have become a more transitional team. If City can transition the way they do, I don't see Liverpool stopping them. And Liverpool have had, like, a track record, like the Bournemouth game being, like, the very first home game of the season, whatever. Like, that was a clear kind of indication of, okay, the structure of this team still isn't right. And I know they've won the last 2 games. I know they've improved after kind of going on that losing run. I still don't think long term that the entire structure of the team is perfect. And I think they probably need another midfielder in there with the 3 they already have.
Okay, good stuff. We'll see how that goes. 4:30 on Sunday. Final one standing on Off the Ball, brought to you by William Hill. Download the app and play today. Over 18s only see gamblingcare.ie for more. Ben, David, thanks very much.
Thanks,
Speak to you later.
The final one standing.
By William Hill.
On Off the Ball.
Download the app and play today.
18 plus gamblingcare.ie.